This narrative can be found in the Bible in John chapter 2. Take some time and read this passage for yourself. As a side fact, Jesus cleared the temple twice, so this was his first time. The events in this episode happened around the year 27 AD in Jerusalem, Judea, and Nazareth. Today's main proverb is, don't distract others who are trying to worship God. It's time for the narrative. Let's learn. After Jesus leaves his unbelieving brothers, he travels with his 5 disciples to Jerusalem for the Passover. Every Jewish male over 12 is required by the law of Moses to come and worship God in the holy city. They will celebrate how God freed their people from Egypt and how the angel of death passed over the houses which spread the blood of a perfect lamb on the doorpost. Jesus, the perfect lamb and Son of God, goes to worship in the city, which is overseen by the Romans. However, as Jesus walks into the temple, his Father's house, he sees that the wicked high priest has allowed people to sell animals in the court of the Gentiles. Gentiles are non-Jewish people. The court of the Gentiles was designed to be a quiet place where the Gentiles could worship, pray, and be taught about God. However, as these Gentiles are trying to pray and worship God, the merchants have moved from outside the temple into the court of the Gentiles and are making lots of noise selling their goods there. The Gentiles cannot pray because they are distracted by all the noise. Jesus looks at the greedy money changers along with the merchants shouting as they are busy selling oxen, sheep, and doves. This makes Jesus very angry. Imagine being in a church service trying to listen to a preacher pray, but there are a bunch of vendors yelling, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jacks, cotton candy, get them now." You know, you could not focus, and it would make you angry because they are disrespecting a place of worship. That is how Jesus feels. Jesus leaves the temple and finds some cords. The one who had created the world now creates a whip out of these cords. It's time for Jesus to clean out his Father's house. So with great authority, he goes back into the temple and he chases the merchants out of the temple along with their sheep and oxen. He goes over to the money changers who are putting business before worship, and he turns over all their tables and dumps out all their money. With authority, he points at the people selling doves and says, "Get these animals out of here and stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." His disciples remember what King David had written in the Bible. He wrote, "Zeal," or passion, "for your house will consume me." Jesus is angry that greedy people have turned his Father's house into a money-making scheme. However, some of the religious leaders are angry at Jesus for kicking out the merchants. After all, they were the ones who allowed them to sell goods in the court of the Gentiles. So the Jewish leaders say, "If you have the authority to kick these people out, show us a miracle to prove your authority." Jesus answers, "I tell you, destroy this temple and I will raise it up in 3 days." Jesus is talking about his body. If the people destroy his body, his temple, he has the authority to bring it back to life 3 days later. Only God's Son has this much authority. Sadly, the religious leaders do not understand his words and they start to make fun of him. They say, "This temple took 46 years to build, and will you raise it up in 3 days? However, Jesus' disciples will remember these words after he is risen from the dead. Jesus spends time in Jerusalem during the week-long festivals of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. During this time, he performs many miracles that reveals his identity as the Messiah. Many people believe in him based on these miracles and are saved. However, Jesus, in his wisdom, who knows the hearts and minds of all men, chooses not to entrust himself, this includes his future plans, to them. So, what can we learn from today's narrative? Well, today's proverb is, don't distract others who are trying to worship God. Jesus was very serious about worshiping his Father. Are you? When the pastor is preaching, are you listening? Or are you like the merchants who focused on self-serving things? When you worship God at church with singing, are you focused on him? Or do you joke around and distract your friends? The next time you're at church, ask yourself, would Jesus make a whip and chase me away because I'm distracting others who are trying to worship his Father? Or would he be pleased with me for worshiping him in spirit and in truth? So, take today's proverb, turn it into a question, and ask yourself, do I distract others who are trying to worship God? In our next episode, we are going to meet a very powerful old man named Nicodemus who wants to talk to Jesus. So find out what happens in John chapter 3 and make sure to watch our next episode about Jesus and Nicodemus.
Don't forget kids. It's theology for everyday life for kids. You don't forget to feed your pet rock. So don't forget this name, Theology for Everyday Life for Kids. It's not for dancing bananas.
As always, my videos, PowerPoints, curriculum, coloring pages, and worksheets are free. Follow the link in the description below to download them.